Disney. No, not Disney. Ah, yes, Disney. Everyone's favorite source of returning to the glory days of being a kid who lacks major responsibility. Although continuing to make bigger and more innovative projects, Disney does capitalize off nostalgia. Some of their earliest hit motion pictures, including Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, Dumbo, and Cinderella, just to name a few, are still very popular and are still the stars of many of Disney's commercial entities, such as TV shows, clothing, toys, and rides at its relative parks. People love Disney, there's no doubt about that. Disney is the media powerhouse of the 21st century. Hey Blake, what about the pressing social issues that Disney had at the start of its movie-making career that they would eventually have to later make up in the most recent films? Whoa, oh, that's not in the script. Why would you even say that? Okay, everybody back to two, please. All jokes aside, Disney is this huge corporation with almost every major corporation, if not all. There will always be some pressing social issues that they will inevitably face. At least this seems to be the trend in recent years. For older and bigger companies like Disney, these problems range from all around the board and from different time periods. Disney has faced all sorts of diversity issues in the past, dealing with race, ableism, sexual and gender identity, and gender roles, among others. There is a lot that can go deeper with each topic here, but for this video, I want to discuss the subject of gender roles. More specifically, in this video, I will talk about Disney's early use of gender in their films, as well as describe their shift to more modern-day films. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Let's start with taking a look at our old pal Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Made in 1937, this film is the classic example of damsel in distress and in need of rescuing by a strong, masculine, and utterly handsome man. Prince Charming to the rescue like always. This common theme is seen throughout a lot, and I mean a lot, of Disney films, especially in films before the 1990s. Think Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, Star Wars, and Indiana Jones. This was the pattern for a lot of Disney films that smashed the box offices. What's interesting to see is that Disney's top grossing films before the 1990s pretty much all followed this theme, so that goes to show that us as viewers love this formatted plotline.
I have a very bad feeling about this.
Now this raises the question, is this a bad thing? Well, through research I found two main schools of thought. One says it's not inherently bad, while the other says it stems from a bad thing in US history. When talking about the 1954 motion picture 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, James W. Martins, in his essay titled Brains, Bronze, and Masculine Desire in Walt Disney's classic scene fiction film, says that characters in Disney films are relative to the time period in which they were created. Fishermen and seagoers at the time were almost always men. Therefore, in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, you don't see a single woman. Martins argues that it goes without saying that the focus of the male characters in the story was not on helping or gaining the favor of a woman, which is what we do see in some other, quote, princess films, end quote, of the era. So Martins would argue that it is not so much about men being the rescuers while women being the ones needing rescued, it's just about what tells a good story. The other school of thought that I found is probably much more agreed upon. Honestly, out of the two, I myself agree with it a little more. It's the thought that men and women were simply not treated as equals at the time, and that translated over to motion pictures as well. Melissa A. Collier-Meek says in her essay titled Gender Role Portrayal and the Disney Princess that men were seen as the providers and women were seen as the homebodies and the ones in need of provision. This is why the man was always the hero in the 1900s Disney film.
I can't understand it.
So now that we talked a little bit about what the early stages of Disney looked like in terms of gender roles, let's now discuss the shift into what I am going to call the progressive era of Disney. Although not perfect and still being worked on today, I think this time period marks the shift of gender roles in Disney films. And to put a timestamp on its beginnings, let's just say it started at the release of The Little Mermaid in 1989. What? Women can make their own decisions? Wait, and the decisions they are making are without a man's approval? Wow, this is crazy. This is a direct quote from the Disney producers of the late 80s after hearing the Little Mermaid plotline for the first time. Probably. Anyway, we begin to see women in the progressive era of Disney as the solo protagonists, and in a lot of ways, their own heroes. We can see this in The Little Mermaid as Ariel seeks her own freedom and a world outside her own. Yes, she does get tricked, and yes, bad things do happen to her that require some assistance of a man, but it's the first time we see a step in the right direction. Another movie that came out shortly after is Aladdin. Although the main protagonist is a man, Princess Jasmine is... She's adventurous and helps out Aladdin any chance she gets. Also, she is defiant to the authoritative men in her life, a little bit to her father, and a lot to Jafar. Other notable mentions that carry the same empowered mindset are Pocahontas and Mulan, released in the years surrounding the two previously mentioned films of the 90s. So great, Disney is becoming more progressive in terms of societal gender roles, but they aren't perfect, as I mentioned before. Amanda Putnam wrote an essay titled Mean Ladies: Transgendered Villains in Disney Films. It can be found in the gender chapter of Diversity in Disney Films, critical essays on race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, and disability. In her essay, Putnam discusses an anecdote that takes a look at the popular category of Disney villains in a new light. When her 3-year-old daughter asked her to, quote, watch the one without the mean lady, end quote, which is a reference to The Little Mermaid, Putnam realized that many Disney villains, quote, display transgendered attributes, depicted as women with either strong masculine qualities or as strangely defeminized, while the male bad guys are portrayed as effeminate, often complete with stereotypical limp-wristed affectation. So yeah, not exactly perfect, but on their way. Now that we talked about this era of Disney films, let's now discuss the final era I want to touch upon in this video. This is the modern era of Disney, the era that we are in right now. The best example of this kind of thing that I'm trying to describe here is the 2021 hit film Encanto. There's a lot of play here. First, the main protagonist is a woman, which is great and a sign of post-progressiveness. Second, the film doesn't even have the common antagonist. In fact, there really isn't any antagonist, at least not a physical one. Modern day Disney seems to try their best not to cross the line of social issues, especially ones that involve gender and gender roles. Other movies that followed this same theme and came out around the same time as Encanto include Moana, where the main character discovers her own identity through defiance, as well as Turning Red, where topics of gender, sexuality, and disability are explored even further. Okay, so I hope you learned a little something about gender roles throughout the motion picture eras of Disney. There is so much more to explore in this realm as well as many others, so I hope you do. Thanks for listening. Peace.